Is this going to be on the test? Every teacher has heard that question. And every teacher has felt that small, sinking feeling when they hear it. Because that question from a 14-year-old is a perfect diagnostic tool. It tells you exactly what your assessment system has taught students to value. Not the learning or the understanding or building curiosity, but it's about the test itself and whatever earns a number. Our entire grading architecture has taught students to ask that question. We built that response into the system, and now we're frustrated that they give it back to us. I'm John D'Adamo, and this is The School Doctor, a podcast where we diagnose the health of K-12 education and prescribe solutions so it can grow and thrive. Today, we're examining the measurement systems we use to evaluate learning, the whole architecture, and the question we owe our students an honest answer to. What are we actually measuring? Let's make our rounds. In 1977, NASA strapped a message in a bottle to the side of the Voyager spacecraft and launched it into the void. The Golden Record, a 12-inch phonograph disc coated in actual gold, packed with greetings in 55 languages, mathematical principles, a map of Earth's location in the universe, and music from Bach to Chuck Berry. Scientists and artists spent months deciding what to put on that disc. They had to answer a question that sounds simple, but is actually bottomless. If some intelligent life form stumbles across this thing 1,000,000 years from now, what single sliver of humanity do we want them to see? Every school in America answers a version of that question each semester. We call it a transcript. A transcript is a school's golden record. It's the disc we hand to the universe and say, this is what we measured, this is what mattered, this is who this student was in our building. And what's actually on it? Course titles, letter grades, a GPA, maybe a class rank. If an alien civilization found a high school transcript drifting through space, they'd conclude that human education cares about performance in discrete subject areas, measured in letter grades, ranked against peers. They wouldn't see critical thinking anywhere. They wouldn't see creativity or collaboration or character. Not because those things didn't happen in that school, but because the recording device had no way to capture them. Over the last few episodes, we've been circling this diagnosis from different directions: assessment design, professional development, student data governance. Each episode surfaced a different symptom of the same condition, a system that performs its values rather than practicing them. Today, we explore the structural root, because many issues start with what we choose to record. The scientists who designed the Golden Record understood something that most schools haven't reckoned with. Your recording instrument helps define your message. Voyager couldn't carry a library, so it carried a single disc, and every choice about what went on that disc was also a choice about what got left off. Our transcripts work the same way. A letter grade can capture what a student produced, but it can't capture how they grew, what made them curious, or the moment they changed their mind about something that really mattered to them. Those things happen in every building in the country. They just don't always make it onto the record. The grading system most American schools use is an artifact of administrative problem solving, not a neutral measurement tool. And understanding where it came from changes how you think about what it measures. Let's go back. In 1906, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching created the Carnegie Unit, a standardized measure of classroom time. 1 unit equaled 120 hours of contact time with an instructor. It was actually designed to standardize pension eligibility for college professors. Seat time became the currency of education because it provided administrative efficiency, not because it correlates with learning in any way. From there, the architecture grew. Credit hours, grade point averages, class rank, weighted and unweighted GPAs, transcripts organized by course title and letter grade. Each layer was added to make the system more precise, but more precise at measuring what exactly? Mostly compliance, along with completion, attendance, and the ability to accumulate credit hours while producing acceptable outputs within standardized timeframes. We bolted learning objectives onto this architecture later, added rubrics and standards and outcome statements, but the foundational structure is still the Carnegie unit. The core is still seat time, and the dashboard still reads in letters and numbers that tell you very little about what a student actually knows, what they can do, or what they care about. The Voyager team at least knew what they were curating. They agonized over every selection. We inherited our recording system from a pension formula, and we've never questioned whether it was capturing the right signal. If you look closely at what the system actually measures, a few things come into focus. First, the gap between mission statement and transcript is a gap between our aspirations and the architecture we use to try to achieve them. Pick up any school's mission statement. You'll find words like critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, character, intellectual curiosity, global citizenship. Now look at the same school's transcript. Do any of those words appear anywhere on it? I'm betting that the answer is no. If the Voyager scientists had worked the way schools do, they'd have written a beautiful manifesto about the full richness of human experience and then loaded the disk with nothing but tax returns and census data. Technically accurate, bureaucratically defensible, and completely silent about everything that makes us worth knowing. Students are rational actors, and they optimize for what gets measured. When what gets measured is the grade, students pursue the grade. The gap between mission statement and transcript has real consequences, and students have figured out which document actually matters for their long term. That architecture distorts our signal even when students do learn. A parent opens a grade portal at mid-year. The report card says 33%. The parent's stomach drops. They scroll down and they find the explanation. There were 2 zeros early on in the semester, followed by some steady improvement, and then there was a strong finish. Scores such as 0, 0, and 100, they averaged together for a 33. The student struggled, then something clicked, and then they learned the material. But the mean average can't capture that story. It can only compute the numbers, which is why the parent asks the only question that really matters right now. Does my child understand this now? And the grading system has no way to answer that because it was designed to produce a summative score history in an average form, not an ultimate mastery report. Averaging punishes late learning, which is already a problem in a developmental process where growth rarely follows a clean schedule. It becomes something worse when the student who started behind did so for reasons beyond their control and gets penalized mathematically for the time it took to catch up. We call this the tyranny of the mean. Second point, the inherited architecture is doing 2 conflicting jobs, and we need to be honest about that. Process-based assessment, the kind we prescribed in episode 1 where you make thinking visible through iteration, reflection, and performance, that's harder to grade than a 5-paragraph essay. It takes more time, produces more ambiguity, and it doesn't translate neatly into a letter grade or a GPA. The deeper problem is that the grade is being asked to serve 2 masters at once within our system. It claims to communicate learning while simultaneously creating the spread schools rely on for ranking, placement, honors, and admissions narratives. Those are fundamentally different jobs. If you need a sorting system, build one and let's name it honestly. But if you need a learning measure, let's protect that from the sorting demand. What you can't do honestly is pretend that one number serves both purposes without distorting at least one of them. It's harder to defend a more holistic approach to parents who want to know their child's specific number. Your daughter is a B+. It's clean, comprehensible, and easily compared. Your daughter is developing sophisticated analytical skills but still struggles to synthesize competing perspectives is richer, it's more accurate, more useful, but it doesn't fit on a college application. And that one is not a trivial obstacle. Colleges want GPAs and class rank. Scholarship programs want transcripts that are produced in a standardized format. Parents want data points they can compare so that they can get their child admitted to the college of their choice. The system reproduces itself because everyone along the chain requires the same currency, the same letter grades and GPA, the exact same format. Nobody upstream has agreed to accept a different kind of record. So let's be transparent about what we're measuring. If you're going to prescribe assessment reform, you have to name the structural forces that make it hard, or your prescription sounds naive. Third point, people are already recording differently, and what they've learned is worth examining. The most ambitious effort to redesign the transcript itself is the Mastery Transcript Consortium, founded in 2017 by the head of a Hawkins School in Ohio. The idea came from an unlikely place. A parent mentioned that the Cleveland Clinic's medical school doesn't give grades, but instead evaluates students' competency through electronic portfolios of their work. The head of school asked the obvious question, why don't we do that for high school? The Mastery Transcript replaces letter grades and GPA with competency-based learning records and multimedia portfolios of student work. Students demonstrate mastery of skills and knowledge by presenting evidence, not by accumulating points. The consortium now includes around 380 member schools, both public and private, spanning systems that serve over 500,000 learners. And the college admissions question that everyone worries about? Students using the Mastery Transcript have been accepted at over 500 colleges and universities, including MIT, Harvard, and Stanford. No admissions office contacted by the consortium has said that they can't work with it. In May 2024, the consortium was acquired by ETS, the Educational Testing Service, as part of a broader initiative we'll come back to. That means the alternative transcript is no longer a fringe experiment. It's now housed inside the same organization that makes the GRE and the TOEFL. It's reached the mainstream. Standards-based grading is a less radical but more widespread alternative, and the research on it is worth understanding. A 2024 randomized controlled trial in 9th grade math classrooms studied a system called Parlo, developed in partnership with Dylan William, one of the leading researchers in formative assessment. The system bases final grades on the number of learning outcomes a student has mastered. It provides formative feedback along the way and lets students reassess for full credit after further study. The researchers found that the system promoted student agency and a sense of partnership with teachers. We'll note a caveat that the broader research on standards-based grading is mixed. Results have varied depending on content area, grade level, and especially consistency of implementation across teachers, and how much administrative support is behind it. Lindsay Unified School District in California has been working in a performance-based, competency-oriented system for years, built around demonstrated mastery rather than averaging performance over time. What families there report is both simple and powerful. Grades finally mean what they had always assumed grades meant. Can my child do this work? That's the signal a grade should send, and it's the one that traditional architecture buries under a mountain of averages. One of the most consistent findings across decades of grading research is also one of the most uncomfortable. The reliability of teacher-assigned grades, it's low, both between different teachers grading the same work and even within the same teacher grading it at different times. Variability decreases when you use fewer grading categories, which is one reason the 4.0 mastery scale tends to produce more consistent results than the 100-point percentage scale. The traditional system's appearance of precision is largely an illusion. However, there's also significant pushback to these alternative approaches by those who have been deeply embedded in traditional grading structures. San Francisco's Grading for Equity initiative was paused in 2025 after significant community backlash. Teachers elsewhere are grappling with altered workloads and the challenge of explaining new systems to skeptical families. Many schools that implement standards-based grading then convert those mastery marks back into letter grades for college-bound transcripts, a move that changes the language without changing the underlying logic. I've called that cosmetic compliance in my newsletter, and I stand by that term. Parents think the system has changed, while students continue to see the same sea. Then there are microschools. That sector has grown dramatically since the pandemic. A 2025 sector analysis from the National Microschooling Center estimates roughly 95,000 microschools are now serving approximately 1.5 million students nationwide, which is comparable to all Catholic school enrollment in the entire United States. Many of these schools have moved toward portfolio assessment, narrative evaluation, and competency-based progression. But a March 2025 RAND report found that the academic impact of microschools has not yet been rigorously evaluated, so data on student outcomes is sometimes unavailable or inconsistent. Microschools often bypass some of the more traditional gatekeeping measures that we have, licenses, certification, accreditation. But that has started to change. Up to about 22% of microschools are now accredited. But beyond credentials, microschools are proof that families want something different from the traditional model. And some of them are doing genuinely innovative work in assessment. It's also worth noting many microschools are frequently able to deliver at least 2 out of 3 of the NAIS jobs to be done framework at sometimes 25% of the cost of traditional models. That's a stat that should give every independent school head and diocesan superintendent in the country pause. The grading reform movement certainly has momentum, and they recently gained a new ally. And in an interesting twist of history, it's actually the people who built the original architecture who are now trying to replace it. In 2023, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, the same organization whose ancestor created the Carnegie Unit in 1906, they partnered with ETS to launch an initiative called Skills for the Future. The explicit goal is to shift American education from time-based to competency-based learning. In February 2026, they released skills progressions for collaboration, communication, and critical thinking, the first concrete tools in a multi-year effort to build an entirely new assessment architecture. When the Mastery Transcript Consortium was folded into ETS in 2024, it brought the alternative transcript under the same institutional roof. So now the creators of the Carnegie Unit, the creators of standardized testing, and the creators of the competency-based transcript are now all working on the same project. That institutional convergence has the opportunity to change the calculus for individual schools. For decades, the argument against assessment reform has been, we can't move until the system moves. Well, now the system is moving. So will individual schools move with it, or will they wait until the new architecture fully deploys and then scramble to catch up? The prescription that follows is designed for schools that want to start now, without waiting for the national consensus that may never arrive in the neat package everyone hopes for. You can't overhaul a grading system in one semester, and the schools that have tried can tell you exactly how that ends. But you can start in 5 places that don't require anyone's permission except your own. First, audit what academic metrics you're actually recording. Take your most recent assessment, any subject, any grade level. Ask 3 questions about it. Does this assessment appear anywhere in your mission statement's language? If your mission says critical thinking and your assessment measures recall, you've got a track on the record that doesn't match your liner notes. What does this assessment tell you about a student that you didn't already know from watching them in class? If the answer is not much, then the assessment is confirming compliance, not revealing learning. And could a student earn a passing grade without genuinely understanding the material? If yes, the assessment's measuring production, not thinking. This audit works best as an ongoing practice, not something you do once and file away. Do it regularly, and over time, it reshapes your instincts about what assessments are for. Strategy number 2, pilot process-based assessment in one course or even one unit. Choose just one teacher, one class, one unit within that course, and start to design it around process. That means grading drafts, not just final products. Build in structured peer feedback as a graded component. Requiring student reflection that's specific enough to be meaningful. For example, what changed between your first draft and your last? Why? What would you do differently? Including a live performance element, a presentation, a discussion, a demonstration, where the student has to show that they can do the thing, not just submit the thing. Document what happens. What shifts in student engagement? What gets harder or easier for the teacher? What do students have to say about the experience when they think back on it? That type of documentation becomes the evidence for expanding the pilot or for learning why it didn't work and adjusting. Third, start building parent communication now. The biggest obstacle to assessment reform is communication, not pedagogy. Parents are conditioned from their own experiences as former students to expect letter grades and GPAs. When those things change, anxiety spikes, not because the old system was better, but because it was legible and comprehensible to the frame of reference. Parents could read the old disc. They knew what a B+ meant, or at least they thought they did. The fix is to start the conversation now before anything changes. We're thinking about how we measure learning at this school. We believe that there might be better ways to show you what your child knows and can do. We'd like to share what we're exploring and hear your questions. That kind of opening is an invitation to think together, not a commitment to upend everything tomorrow. It builds the relational infrastructure that makes eventual change possible instead of terrifying. Schools that have done this work well report a specific shift in how parents engage. Emails stop asking, "Why is this a C?" and start asking, "What does my child still need to learn, and what evidence would show it?" When the conversation changes like that, the architecture is already beginning to transform. Fourth, use backward design from skills, not content. The factory model starts with content. What do students need to know? The alternative starts with capability. What should students be able to do? As backward design is far from a new concept. Wiggins and McTighe have advocated for it for decades. But the weakness of our current measurement architecture makes it urgent. If you design backward from students should be able to write a 5-paragraph essay about the Industrial Revolution, you're designing for a product that can't be reproduced without understanding. If you design backward from students should be able to analyze how economic systems shape human behavior and defend that analysis with evidence, you're designing for thinking, and that changes everything about how you assess. The distinction here matters because content-first design assesses mimicry and reproduction, while capability-first design assesses deeper thinking. And deeper thinking is the one thing that can only come from the student who's right in front of you. Fifth, accept the courage problem and start anyway. I want to be really honest about this. Everything I've prescribed so far is harder than what most schools currently do. It takes more time and requires more expertise, and it produces assessments that are harder to standardize and harder to defend to external stakeholders who want a clean number. The temptation will be to wait. Wait for colleges to change their admissions criteria. Wait for a national consensus on alternative transcripts. Wait for somebody else to go first. But over 500 colleges have already accepted students using Mastery Transcripts. The Carnegie Foundation is actively building the post-Carnegie unit ecosystem, and at least 3 states already have directed their university systems to award scholarships based on alternative transcripts, the same way they award them based on traditional ones. The future is arriving right now. It just isn't evenly distributed yet. Every year you continue measuring compliance instead of learning. You're choosing the dominance of our assessment architecture over the academic needs of our students. And our students know it. They've been asking the question, is this going to be on the test, for years? It's the most honest question in education, and we owe them an honest answer. Okay, so one thing to do this week, pull up that last assessment you gave. It doesn't matter which one, and ask yourself one question. What does this assessment actually tell me about this student that I couldn't learn from watching them think in class? This assessment's going to confirm what you already knew. It's measuring the student's ability to produce an acceptable output within a standardized time frame, which is exactly what the Carnegie unit was designed to reward. The assessment might still be useful for other reasons, but it's not telling you anything new about learning. Now ask the follow-up. What would an assessment look like that could only be completed by the specific student in front of you? One that requires their thinking process, their in-class experience, their specific intellectual path through this material. The version of that assessment does exist, and it's almost certainly a better assessment than one that you started with. If an alien found your school's transcript drifting through interstellar space, would they understand what your students actually learned? Or would they just see how many points they accumulated? Would they hear music or just static? Voyager is still traveling, by the way. Nearly 50 years later, billions of miles from Earth, long past the edge of our solar system, beyond the reach of anything else humans have ever built. And the golden record is still out there, still carrying the best of us, a record of aspiration, of who we were and who we still hope to be. Our students deserve a record like that, not a transcript that captures their compliance, but something that captures their growth, their thinking, the moments they failed forward and came back stronger. Something that says to the universe, this is who they were becoming, who they want to be, and this is worth paying attention to. The path forward starts with the willingness to ask whether the system that we've inherited is still measuring what our schools actually value, and to act on that answer, even when acting is harder than inheriting. Next time on The School Doctor, we're shifting from the classroom to the boardroom. Our next episode will examine what happens when donors hand you $1 million, but with strings attached, and why those strings might be the most expensive part. If your school is rethinking assessment, reimagining grading, or trying to figure out what to measure in the age of AI, Educational Vitality Partners offers diagnostic consultations. Think of it as a partner for your institution's growth. Visit edvitality.org to learn more. I'm John D'Adamo, and this has been The School Doctor. Thanks for making rounds with me.